Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Shomler. This is the Desperately Dating Podcast, Episode 12, and I am joined by my wonderful and wise stepmom, Karyn. Hello, Karyn. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Karyn, what's today's episode about? I believe it's something about getting back together. Is that correct to you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about getting back together with your ex.
Ooh. Here's my question, right off the bat. You had this idea. I loved it. Does it ever work? Can you get back together with an ex and make it work? I don't know. What do you think?
My gut reaction is no. I feel like I've seen that in my own personal experience and, with friends and family and whatever. It seems like it just never works.
Yeah, we had a pre-production meeting and you mentioned the idea of how there sometimes are people that have an off and on relationship. Like they're on, they're off, they're together, they're not together. And you pointed out very clearly that's just indecision.
I agree. Yep. And in my book, indecision always means no.
If you're not sure, if you're wishy-washy.
If you're wishy-washy, that doesn't equate to a strong commitment.
I go back to there's a reason you broke up.
Yep.
Hello?
That didn't go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any personal experiences with this? Have you seen friends do this, get back together after breaking up? Did you ever have an experience where you did that?
Oh, yeah. Hasn't everyone done that? Because, it's tempting, right? None of us wants to be alone. The benefits of getting back together with an ex is that it's familiar, right?
For better or worse,
For better or worse. Yeah, for better or worse. But it's a known entity. It's maybe a little bit less scary in some ways than getting together with somebody who's brand new. You have some well-worn patterns and familiarity is comfortable.
Yeah. I know you're divorced. Was there ever a moment where you thought about, because I especially with an ex-husband, it's one thing with a girlfriend that you broke up with and you're in high school or college, but when you have kids together with somebody, that seems very tempting. We have kids, we used to have a house, we have all these. How tempting was that?
Oh, for sure. I think what you're getting at is, how much do you have invested in the relationship? And maybe in that sense, if you feel like you've got a lot, it's a stronger impulse to try and make it work out or, try and make everything happen.
Yeah.
I think, though, that it can be hard to let go of a long history, too, because if you've been together for a long time, in my marriage, we were together for almost 20 years, and you have all that shared history, too. Yeah. So the idea of kind of just throwing that all away is hard.
Shared history, man.
That's something that you can't get with a new relationship. You have to start from square one.
There's a song by Ben Rector called Old Friends, where it talks about how you can't make old friends. The people that you grew up with, the people that you went through those trials and battles with, you just can't replace them. But it doesn't mean you should either. That's
right.
The other thing. I go back to there's a reason you broke up. Sometimes the pain of the past, you can forgive it. You can say hey, I get it. You were messed up. I was messed up. We were kids. But you still have to wrestle with seeing that person that hurt you or seeing that person that you hurt. Or, I don't know how, the pain from the past is, I don't know, people have to be so mature to be able to forget. Forgiveness is one thing. That takes a lot of maturity in its own right. It takes even more to just straight up forget. I don't think people are humans capable of that. I
don't think so, actually. And I'm thinking back to, things that have happened to me in past relationships, and I've definitely forgiven because I am a believer that it's best to forgive. I think carrying around chips on your shoulder is just hurting yourself.
Yeah.
But I remember every single one, and there's no way that I think I could get back together with somebody that hurt me that deeply.
Yeah. It's interesting, the idea of why we do it. Because you broke up with somebody, that it didn't work, but I think people get afraid. We cut corners. We get The podcast is called Desperately Dating. We get desperate where we're man, are we going to be alone? Am I going to be alone? Well, this person knows me. This person, we have shared history. I know at least their favorite ice cream and what kind of movies they like. I know we can do that. Is it, I think it's partially because you can visualize yourself with them because you've been with them before. And when you're really desperate, you're really feeling lonely, you've been on a bunch of first dates, you're well, that makes sense. At least I know have some familiarity there, right?
Well, and I think a similar thing that can happen, I know this has happened to me, you break up with somebody and then you start thinking back to maybe past exes, thinking, things were really good with them. Maybe I should, go back to that well, again. Yeah. But I'd also say that I think we tend to have a selective memory at times, where we just remember the good stuff and maybe the bad stuff gets a little cloudier.
Well, it's easy to rationalize, especially like when something ends or it's at the end. Like it's really easy to forget the hard moments and just kind of block them out, focus on the good. I know someone who has been abused, and they kind of kept going back because it was like, well, like right as they were about to leave the person who was abusing them, they would be like, well, like, but and you rationalize it, and it's like, no, step away, get out of that. But it's even someone who's being abused has a hard time stepping away because it's just like you always try to find a way to rationalize their behavior or what was good about it, and who are the bad, who cares?
Yeah,
it was good in these couple moments.
Yeah, exactly. But you bring up an interesting point, and that's this idea about can people reform too? Because I think plenty of times breakups happen because one of the partners or both sometimes have an issue. They're an abuser, or they abuse substances, or they're gamblers, or they have other, really damaging traits. And can somebody reform from that? And then if they do, is that a case where maybe you should consider taking them back? I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing it out there for us to talk about.
It's very interesting. Like, I still lean kind of go back to no. Because here's a great thought. There's a movie, I can't remember the title of it, but there's a movie where the guy is an extreme alcoholic, and they break up, and they get back together, and the girl's like, well, he's different, he's changed. And if that was a real life scenario, I'd say like the movie just got me to my head thinking about this. Like, if that was a real scenario where the guy comes back, says, I'm no longer an alcoholic now, I've been in AA for a year, I got all this stuff, and that's great.
Yeah.
Good for you. Let's imagine it's Ben Affleck's character. Good for Ben Affleck's character, who was an alcoholic and got his life together. But man, like, it doesn't mean the pain you caused that person before you're an alcoholic isn't still there.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I was the wife and my husband was an alcoholic and we got divorced and moved on, if I'm the wife, I'd say, well, like, look, I'm really happy that you're no longer an alcoholic. I'm so, like, for me, you're an ex of mine. Like, I'm so glad your life's getting back together. Doesn't mean I need to let you back into my life, though.
Right.
Doesn't mean I can. Doesn't mean I should. There's no cans. There's no shoulds. It's just, hey, like, we had pain from the past. I'm glad you got your life together. Good for you. Doesn't mean I want to be with you again, or should, or any of that. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that whole trust issue. Once it's been blown, can you really get that back ever? I don't know.
Yeah.
If somebody's hurt your heart in any way, however big or small, can you ever really get over that?
I don't know. I think some people can. I don't know, man. Like, I look back to my past relationships, and like, I don't think I could ever. I certainly can't imagine getting back together with somebody. Like, the trust was broken, and and also, like, you change and grow as a person. Like, from each relationship is, people need to view their relationship as maybe a stepping stone. Like, a great example. My last relationship failed pretty badly. It was painful, but it was a very valuable, important part of my journey as a person and as someone who wants to date and have healthy relationships. Like, I'm in a new relationship, and I'm definitely still grieving the old one. Absolutely. Like, I can own that. My girlfriend knows that, and really encourages that, because every time we have a conversation about my ex and how we can learn from it, it makes my new relationship better. But accepting that, like, I met a guy who owned a brewery in Cincinnati, very wise man, and he said that life is kind of like chapters, right? Where how do I put it? Life has chapters, right? And because you read a chapter, but the chapter ended, doesn't mean the chapter was bad. It just means the chapter's over.
Right.
Move on from that chapter, go into the next part of the story. I think that's how I really feel about breakups, and why would you go back? I don't know.
Well, you made a point just a minute ago about how people change. Time goes by and they change. So you seem to be implying that means that you always grow apart. But I mean, and I'm just being devil's advocate here, but is it possible, though, that maybe you could grow closer together as time goes on, meaning more of a convergence rather than a divergence?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's possible. But again, you go back to, like, well, there's a reason you guys broke up, right? Like, usually you break up because you're going apart. right? I mean, I can't think of if you were going closer together, or if they were headed that direction, you would have found a way to make it work or stay together, right? I mean, I would think, right?
Well, I would think so, but just for the sake of discussion, let's say that one of the parties involved had, some big issue. They needed to grow up a lot, and you separate and go your separate ways, and they do that, and then you meet them again 5 years later.
Yeah, maybe it's on you. Maybe here's
and
a
they've
great
sorted
example,
their shit out. So, I mean, do you give it a try?
Maybe. I think it's better to never say never,
right?
And to have why close the door, right? I guess. Now, if someone hurt you too badly, close the door. I would be hesitant to let someone back into my life, for example. But I guess if they could convince you is not the right word there, but if they came back and said, "Hey, I'm better at my shit. I have my shit together. I want to be with you. I want to make it work," and you were interested, maybe explore it. It just feels dangerous to me, though. I don't know.
I know. I feel the same.
I don't have a good feeling. I don't have a good gut. Maybe that's what it is. I can't define it. It's a bad gut feeling.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe too, we're getting at how it's got to be an individual basis too.
Every situation is unique.
Right. Yeah. So maybe some of it depends upon the reasons why you broke up, and how devastating that was to you, and what that was all about, and whether or not it's something that you feel like you could get over, and then maybe revisit the situation if things changed in the future.
It's very interesting to me. In our pre-production meeting, you even made a joke this is my strong opinion, right?
Yeah.
And you're wearing a strong opinion sports
yes,
shirt.
Yes, I got to represent.
My other podcast, and I think we came into this conversation, you came into this conversation very, very much
that never works.
Hell no.
Yeah, that never works.
Have you talked yourself into changing your mind?
No, I think maybe I've just, through the course of this discussion, come to a more, moderate position that, I'm not going to rule it out. Maybe it would work for some people in some situations. Personally, I feel like I've never seen it work, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I like that take because so often in the sports world, in so many realms of entertainment and everywhere, people make everything black and white.
Yeah.
Yes and no. And the reality is that very few things, if anything, is black and white.
Oh, agreed.
Right?
Yes.
As much as I want to be hell no, never date your ex, that's a bad idea. I mean, you have to recognize it's not that simple.
I know. I'm actually really curious to hear from somebody that this has worked really well.
But even in my
notes,
has
it really worked?
I wrote down a thing that says people who, because someone out there just started a new relationship with somebody that they broke up with, right?
Yeah, so you're gonna be oh yeah, it works.
Somebody listening to this podcast is well, even if it's not working, they want it to be wrong, right? The Cincinnati Bengals are a football team that I have had a combative relationship with because I love Cincinnati. I love the people. They're a horribly run franchise. And I criticize them for their flaws. And the Bengals fans get really furiously mad at me. They say, well, blah, blah, blah. But somebody who's chosen to be a fan of that team has to argue with me.
Yeah.
Because they have to rationalize their choice to be a Bengals fan.
They have to be loyal.
They can't accept that their thing might be flawed and have problems because then that reflects, it makes them, they would feel an attack. So you feel an obligation to defend your position even if it's wrong. And so I would think that someone who, if you just started dating your ex-girlfriend, right, and you're you better be wrong, you might not even be arguing from a place of reason. You might be arguing simply because that's what you have to tell yourself to keep doing what you're doing.
Well, and to honestly make it work, right? I mean, if you feel well,
maybe
this will work, then maybe, it probably won't if you're not totally invested. But can you think of, kind of sticking with the sports thing, but I'm just curious, is there ever an instance where a player has left one team and come back and did it work or not?
So LeBron James grew up in Cleveland. We grew up in Akron, Ohio, very close to Cleveland. Got drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, went there for years. They have a really bad owner. They couldn't win a championship. They'd never given the pieces he needed. He left Cleveland, went to Miami, won a championship, built a great team. And when he was done in Miami, he went back to Cleveland.
Was that his idea or?
It was kind of all of it. I think it was the story was too good. And he when you break up with so Cleveland was his hometown team. And he felt this desire, I want to win in my hometown team. I want to make it happen for my city. And so he came back to Cleveland, and in fact, guess what he did? He did win a championship. It's the first one they've ever won. It's it's a historic thing that nobody believed Cleveland in any sports, basketball, baseball, football, any of it. Cleveland can't win a championship, and they did with LeBron James. But you know what's funny? They won the championship and then they still broke up afterwards.
Ah.
Right? Like it was redemption. It was a great
Vindication.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like my ex-girlfriend and I were friends for so long. And so like when we broke up, for me, it was a crushing of a dream. I'm sure that when LeBron left Cleveland to go to Miami, it was a dreamed crushed, right? I couldn't make it happen where I was. So we came back and made it happen, but there was no longevity there. Like, you know, like it's like me getting back together with my ex-girlfriend. We got married! And then it flames out in 3 months because it never really was sustainable.
Right. You know, that made me think of another point. You know, we had talked before about how sometimes you get back together with an ex out of fear of being alone. But what if it's sometimes you get back together out of fear of failure? Like, so you can, you know, have like that redemptive thing going on where you get back together with them and show the world that, yes, see, we really were meant to be. And it wasn't a bad idea. We really do work together.
It's ego. It's falling in love with the story. And it's not just ego. It's like, man, I guess it is ego. I didn't fail.
Right.
I'm not a screw up.
Yeah, that can be part of it sometimes.
I'm telling you, when I look back on my former relationship, I don't miss it. I don't miss like I'm having a great time. Like my new relationship is a way better fit. I understand the value of fit now, but the thing that sticks in my craw, the thing that bothers me is the failure.
Yeah.
And I take it so personally. Like, is it me? Did I screw up? Like, did I do enough? Like, oh my gosh, it makes me go in circles and circles because I feel like I screwed up and failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's not a good reason to get back together with an ex.
Not at all. No. In fact, we'll get into this in the next episode. The next episode's all about getting revenge against your ex.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. But we'll definitely broach that topic of what do you do in that situation. I think it's interesting. There's one more thing I'd like to go in this topic. It's the idea of taking a break, right? There's an episode of Friends where Ross and Rachel break up. Is it Ross and Rachel? I believe. And they're on a break. And something happens, and there's that line. Ross goes, "We were on a break," you know. And that's I say the whole story because I think everyone can relate to. You're in a relationship, it's not going well, or it's not quite working. You're like, let's take a week off. Let's take a break, and we'll see where we're at in a week. To me, I've always felt like that's just breaking up. What is your take on all that?
Well, I think sometimes it can be a trial. To see how it feels to be apart from each other. I'm not convinced that it's always a death knell for the end. I mean, I think that sometimes it's valid, especially if emotions are running high, to have some time apart to just sort of get yourself centered again and sort out your thoughts and then come back together and maybe have a more productive discussion or whatever needs to occur about, the fate of your relationship. So I don't think it's always just a euphemism for breaking up.
Is the difference this? When you break up, it's final. We broke up, we're done. Mm-hmm. When you go on a break, there is that idea, let's reevaluate. Mm-hmm. It's not as final. So maybe that's the key, right? Is that it's an agreement between two people. Hey, let's reevaluate in a week.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll move on. Maybe you'll have a week off and be like, oh no, it was right. I am done.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll break off and go, you know what? Like I've been thinking about it for a week. Mm-hmm. I needed some time to grieve and to deal with all this stuff. But like, you know what? I miss you. I want to work on this. I want to figure this out.
Yeah, I think sometimes distance can be really helpful. Time and distance can be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to not feel like you have to be pressured to make a decision like right now, especially if you feel a little conflicted about it.
And maybe the key is like, there's not a template. I've said this so many times. You said this to me so many times, like, screw what society says about relationships. Like, do what feels right and best for you. Mm-hmm. And if you need to take a break, I do. Here's my hiccup with taking a break. Now that I say it out loud,
okay,
because you do this with my dad. You guys, we always got to say it out loud.
Yep.
When I say it out loud, you decided to take a break because things weren't working. Isn't that if nothing else, it's indecision. If nothing else, that's like, hey, we have problems. It's not working. They're so bad we can't even deal with them. I'm not sure if I want to be with you. Isn't that just indecision?
Well, I mean, maybe if you take a really hard line on it, but I also feel like we're human and sometimes we just need a little break to sort out what's going on in our heads.
I guess I'm going back to that thing where I'm trying to make it black and white and it's just not.
Yeah.
It's just nuanced.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Karyn, do you have anything else to say about this topic?
I don't think so. I think it's been a fun discussion and it's been enlightening to me. Like you pointed out, I came in with kind of a hardline view on it that it was never, but as many things are, it just seems like there's a lot of gray there.
maybe the answer, because I'm left with the question, is there ever a good time to get back together? For me, I think the answer is no. But also, like, why not? Like, I mean,
But who am I?
Yeah, who am I to tell you no, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know personally I'd really struggle with that.
Yeah.
But also, like, hey, I don't feel comfortable saying never get back together with an ex. I just don't. I walk away from this conversation thinking I would say that, feeling like I can't.
Yeah, me too.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. My name is Zach Shomler. This has been the Desperately Dating Podcast, episode 12. My name is Zach Shomler. That has been a wonderful and wise stepmom, Karyn. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.